It's constantly having that individual connection with each person. That's how you build that culture. Start the conversation with what's important to you. What do you need? How do you feel valued? How do you feel recognized? That's almost always going to be your golden ticket.
Confident enough
Bingo.
to identify it.
You said the keyword, self-aware enough.
Manny Jerome, welcome to House of Visionaries, powered by Bond. Our podcast guest of the day. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you.
Is this your first time doing something like this?
It is.
How are we feeling?
Super excited. I'm super nervous, but not in the scary nervous, like the excited nervous.
Yeah, we'll get the vibes going.
Yes.
So we've known each other for 5 years now. I think we just figured out. We back in my agency days, I helped with DuPont hiring. That was a very different stage of the journey. COVID happened. A lot's happened.
Yes.
You've had a baby since.
Yes.
You're a mom now, a working mom, that whole dynamic.
Yes.
It's been amazing to see both your career evolve. I'm in 2 companies later than I was then. So
doing amazing things. I mean, part of Chief also.
Yeah.
Shout outs to you.
Cool stuff going
That's
on.
awesome.
So, all right, I know you, but our audience does not. So tell us who you are.
Okay.
And that can take whatever turn you want it to. Tell us about Manny. Tell us about DuPont, your role there, people and culture team. Give us a little elevator pitch to you.
Where do I even start? Okay, so I am on a journey to enlighten the world, as many as I can, one hire at a time, one person at a time, really, that HR is truly for people. And so who I am, what I do at DuPont is all about people experience. From the moment I open up a role or I'm scouting or I'm sourcing to even transitioning out of DuPont, if it comes to that, it's all about the experience. It's all about making sure that people are treated like people, even at work. So that's what I do at DuPont, from talent acquisition, learning and development, organizational design, coaching, mentoring, all of the things that encompass P&C and HR. So I lead that from the Boston site.
And do you call it, you've always called it PNC at DuPont, do you call it that? Is there also HR, or does PNC envelope everything that is kind of like the people to HR world at DuPont?
PNC takes in everything.
Yeah.
And I think it's better that way because it also goes into who we are and how we work. Like, it's all naturally embedded in our DNA.
100%.
So it's like, why do we need to differentiate it? If we're all about the people, if human resources are truly supposed to be resources for humans, it's all about the people and the culture. So we sort of embody that. But of course, I think when it comes to certain things like speaking about operations, and if we're in some sort of strategic meeting, sometimes we'll say HR for data or for the purpose of the conversation.
Right.
But it really is all people and culture. The operations piece, the employee relations piece, all of it.
And you're involved in it all.
All of it, yeah.
So let's take a step back and talk about DuPont as a company. We're not going to go technical here.
Okay.
You or I do not.
I was gonna say, I'm not a scientist now, girl. Okay.
But I know what DuPont does. Explain to our audience what DuPont is trying to do as a company.
Yeah, so we are essentially trying to take drugs or therapies that were once deemed it doesn't work, it's not successful. We're trying to change that. We're trying to use what they call condensates and see if we could make once undruggable drugs druggable or treatable to be able to save patient lives. That's, at the end of the day, it's all about getting to the patients. And that's what everybody that comes into DuPont is about.
And did you come from, remind me, biotech before you joined DuPont?
I did not.
How did you end up in this world?
Interesting you ask. So I was actually, I have a master's in healthcare administration. And I was working at Boston Children's Hospital, or MGH, one of them. And
it was a while ago.
This was like a while ago, yeah. So in that role, I always consider myself a fixer. Like, I like to look at things. I like to see where we can make things better. I like to create processes. I like to put things in place that need to be put in place. And so I've done a lot of that throughout my career. And so when I got a call one day from a recruiter saying, hey, I have a role that you might be interested in, I was thinking, oh, okay. And that made me switch over to my first sort of startup company. And it wasn't a biotech, but it was my first sort of like smaller company, which is a lot different from your big corporations. Yeah. But that's where I sort of got my foot into HR or PNC. Mm-hmm. Now, DuPont came later into that year when I actually got passed up for an opportunity that was supposed to be mine. It was just the organization did what it did, and I got a call from a recruiter again saying, hey, we have this opportunity at a biotech company. Would you like to join? And I interviewed with the person who was the chief people officer at the time. And then I actually spoke to our CEO, Amit. And that's actually where I got this feeling of, wow, there's a company out there, there's a leadership team out there that actually cares about people and not just what you can do for them. So I went from having to clock in at a certain time, having to eat at a certain time, can't be late, can't miss a day for it. Like, I went from the strict, this is our policy, our guidelines, to what do you need? How can I help? What's important to you?
And is that the way that, we'll get into this a little bit more deeply in a minute, but is that the way that you feel PNC sort of serves DuPont?
Yes.
Is it this perspective of what do you need from us? How can we serve you?
Everything we do at DuPont is bottoms up. Of course, outside of the strategic piece, everything that we roll out, everything that we implement, we actually want people to bring their different boxes into DuPont versus trying to fit them into the box of DuPont. Because we feel like if you take care of an individual, who they are, they're gonna naturally show up for you in the way that you need. They're gonna go above and beyond. So when you think about science and innovation, it's easy, right? It makes sense, it clicks, science, innovation. But what if we thought about it when it comes to people? If we thought about the way the world evolves and what people need, and they tell us, and we can support them and give it to them, that's how you get the culture and the environment that DuPont has.
And how do you actually create that? I think that's a really powerful thing to talk about, and a lot of leaders probably do talk about it, but the fact that and I'm sure it shows in your retention of employees, like even throughout the ebbs and flows of what's happened over the past 5 years in the industry, let alone at DuPont, right? How do you actually deploy that in the company in a practical way? What does that mean? Does that mean surveying employees and asking, like, what do you need from us? Does that mean you sitting down with your managers consistently and actually hearing them out and asking how things are going, like the PNC team being really visible in their day-to-day lives? How does that on a practical level, like if I'm an employee at DuPont, how do I feel or notice that my people and culture team is there for me?
Honestly, it's super simple. And I think a lot of people complicate it a little. It's simply asking. It's saying, hey, what do you need? It's having a conversation, not just once a year, not just once a quarter. I'm constantly checking in with folks saying, hey, let's check in again in a week or two about this, or talk to your manager and then let's talk about how that went. Like, it's constantly having that individual connection with each person. That's how you build that culture. And also, not just building that connection and asking, but also being willing to take that feedback. It's about giving feedback, receiving it, and processing it. It's about being willing to say, hey, the team didn't like this. We got to pivot. Let's hear what they need. Let's take a look at the organizational needs and how we can make it a little bit better. But it's being willing to also say, I'm willing to teach. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to give a resource. I'm willing to guide. And that is why I think, in my opinion, a lot of leaders talk a lot about it, but don't actually put any action to it. It's because they don't do the intentional work of taking the time to do that.
And you lose trust in your employees then, right? If you're asking the questions and you're seeking the feedback, but the feedback loop is broken at some point, and the feedback is not being turned into actions, they feel like their voices aren't heard. There's no reason in actually giving their honest opinion. So when you joined DuPont versus where DuPont is now, what looks different?
A lot.
How big were you then? How big are you now?
So I was the 41st employee when I joined. We had a huge growth, and then we got to about 150. I think the most we've ever been is 150. Now we are at 109, I believe, give or take. So we've changed definitely. We've pivoted definitely. Our leadership team looks completely different now. And I think what's definitely changed is you can see an evolution of an actual company, from early stage to what I like to think mid-stage biotech, and with that comes the challenges. Change is never easy, but I think what has definitely changed is the approach, the way we approach now. We're really moving towards this enterprise approach, but also I think what's changed is the support and the importance that the leaders put into people and culture now. I think in the beginning, we were all about building, we're all about growing, we're all about, hey, we need to produce something. And now we're in a place where we're realizing we have the technical capabilities, we have the expertise, we have amazing talent, we have the great leaders that lead us, we have amazing investors, a great board. But now we need to develop and grow and transform. And so that's where the need for that people and culture importance and buy-in from the leadership, that's where that came from.
And how do you do that, right? So we talked about this, like the evolution from a startup company or early stage company through, you've more than doubled. And there's been some probably setbacks along the way, and COVID, and everybody had those, right? But this concept of you're a different company when you're the size that you are now than you were when you hired a lot of the people. You've talked about a lot of the leadership team looks different than it did when you were at that stage, but a lot of them are probably still there. And you talk about Amit, who I know you think incredibly highly of. So a lot of leaders are still there, right? But if I'm a leader who started back in the early Dew Point days, and I'm thinking, well, I was hired for my skill set at that time, right? I was either right out of my PhD and I came in as a scientist, or I came in as a middle management leader or a leader. You took me for who I was at that point.
Yeah.
We're now a different type of company, right? So that means company evolution, but it also means evolution of skill set, of leadership, of all of these things that you may not have been equipped with when you came in.
Absolutely.
So what on that front, what does a company actually, or maybe it doesn't, what's your take on what a company owes to its employees to actually like prepare them and help them evolve throughout that evolution journey of the company, so that it's not just, okay, well, we're double the size we were when I first started. I now need to manage at a way higher level. There's now a lot more expected of me in terms of people management and these types of things, not just the technical stuff that I was hired for with my specific PhD. But there's a lot more expected on the more like human and management side, but I didn't know how to do that back in the day. So like, what is a Dew Point or any other company, what do you feel that the company actually owes to its employees in terms of bringing them along on that journey?
That's actually a great question. So first, I think we go into the mindset of everybody's a learner. Doesn't matter what level you're on, doesn't matter what you're doing, you are a learner, you want to grow, you want to develop, right? And I think that's for everybody. So we already, we identify that, hey, we're moving along, and we identify the gaps in our managers or our leaders, our influencers, and we say, hey, we want to help and support and teach. So we had a first line essentials training by Korn Ferry, which is basically any first time leaders, we put them through that training. And then of course we have executive coaching available for our leaders. And then myself and Lori, we do some coaching as well. But it's all about tapping in with those middle managers and above, tapping in with them and saying, what do you need from me? It's understanding the business from a PNC perspective to know, okay, I can see this is going to happen, see around the corner, and be able to walk with them and coach them through it and guide them through it. It's honestly like Lori, the Chief People and Administrative Officer there, she has done a phenomenal job partnering with the leaders and giving them that one-on-one coaching as we sort of transitioned. And even for myself and working with sort of those middle manager individuals, a lot of them were first-time employees. A lot of our senior scientists were managers to our RAs, and so we would give our RAs opportunities to mentor intern during the summer. Just giving them sort of bits and pieces of insights is super helpful. But also, I think something that helps is when our employees, especially our managers, are able to take their own development into their own hands. So at Dew Point, we've created sort of like a pathing grid, and so people can use that as sort of an opportunity to see what's next. So if I'm thinking about being a people leader in 3 years, I can take a look at what that looks like even as a scientist, and I can sort of start developing those skills. I can talk to PNC and my manager and say, hey, what opportunities are there for me to start building these capabilities? And it's just tapping into them and individually giving them those resources. We use things like LinkedIn Learning a lot, which is super, it's huge. It has so much information in there. But I can't tell you how many times an employee would say, hey, I want to learn more about project management, or hey, I'm thinking about being a leader, but I'm a little bit more introverted, or hey, I want to be better at presenting, can you help? And just giving them, sort of creating that collection or that content and giving it to them and allowing them to soak it in at their own pace, at their own time, for everyone in the organization, that's gold, and people don't see the value in that, I think. But yeah,
I think that's such an interesting concept, because I think we think about, and we talk about this a lot at Bond, we're a very, we call it like an open source learning culture. So what that means is we're a remote business. We cannot read your mind. We have development paths for you. We want to give you all the opportunity that we can, and when we see places to spotlight you or to promote you or to invest in you or to coach you or develop you, we will do those things. At the same time, you were hired because you are a brilliant, thinking, independent, autonomous, responsible person capable of so much. There is the role that you play in your own development as well. And I think that's a really interesting kind of dynamic of what you were just mentioning, of you have all these tools, but it's not PNC's role to shove them down your throat, right?
Exactly.
These tools are there. We are here. If you identify that, you know what, I just gave a presentation and I didn't really feel that strong about it, or my public speaking skills could use a little bit of work. I needed to have a tricky conversation with one of my direct reports. How do I have that? How do I come across in the right way? But that's the thing that you, either as a manager or as an individual contributor, have to recognize about yourself and be self-aware enough, and confident enough to identify it.
You said
to
the
your
key
PNC
word,
team.
self-aware enough.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, not everybody comes into the industry with experience, with self-awareness, with emotional intelligence. So as PNC, that is also something we have to do.
Yeah.
We had to basically get everybody on the same page. And so we created this common language, or this dictionary of words that we could understand, and we did it through Insights Discovery. Basically what that means is everybody in the organization goes through Insights. You get a profile or results, and you can actually use that to your advantage as an individual, as a company, and even as a manager. I think people don't recognize the power of perception. And so when we rolled out that Insights tool, we did workshops. We taught people, made them go through real life scenarios. We helped them understand the language. We even opened up the dialogue and say, hey, you have further questions, we'll sit one-on-one with you. Yeah. And what we realized is that people actually started having these conversations where they're like, today I'm pulling up a lot of my blue energy because I really need to get this done. Or if I'm meeting with Lori, I know she's high yellow energy, and I know when I meet with her, I need to give her an agenda so that we could stay on topic, because that's what I need. And she also knows that, right? Yeah. So little things like that actually helps us collaborate and work better. And I think what we're seeing now is, because of the evolution Dew Point went through, we have no choice but to actually stop and roll this out. Like in the beginning of the year, that's what we did. We paused and said, we need to do this for the organization in order to build more self-awareness, in order to build these leadership capabilities that we need as we move away from early drug discovery company to a more like mid-stage, late-stage biotech company. These are so necessary. And I think a lot of times, we build things thinking about the technical needs and not necessarily about the people needs. And it's not until you get to a pivotal point of, oh shit, we gotta, now it's about it matters the people. And it's like, oh yeah, so I don't necessarily know how to be a people leader. Yeah. And I think we have a lot of people managers. But in this day and age, especially in the culture that
it's not
the same thing. You can manage anybody. You can tell somebody when to clock in. You can say, hey, here are the instructions. Are you doing it? Yes, no. That's easy. The hard part is influencing, getting them to want to do it, getting them to say, I see the vision, I see the goal, I believe in it, and so I'm going to contribute my best. Because you're supporting me, because you treat me like a person, because you're part of who I am. That's the piece that I think a lot of leaders are missing. And I think because the leaders don't see the value in taking that humanistic approach to the business or to the science, I think that's where the challenge, that's where you come at this influx point in the road where we got to push the science, but the people don't want to be there, but we need them to push the, that's where you really start to see the break in the culture, you start to see the shift. And then once people start to get aligned, oh, wait, if I can actually understand or see something from another person's perception, I could probably collaborate a little bit better with them. It might make my work a little bit easier. Or in a situation where you have a group of leaders who don't align on something, at the end of the day, you come back to, we're trying to get to the patients. It comes back to that shared I guess you can say, that shared goal. And it doesn't matter what you do. Those hard parts, those pieces where it's like super, super hectic, super, super stressed, you're going to have a team that rides with you through it, because they know on the other side of that, they can take a day off or two if they say, hey, I'm burnt out. They know they can say, hey, I need a mental day, or I'm just not showing up today, and it's okay, because they're humans and their leaders believe that, their leaders know that. So I think that's the tricky piece, is understanding that.
And so you use these almost personality assessments, right, where everybody takes it, and I did this at a previous company, if I remember correctly. It gives you sort of your analysis of your, not your personality, but
it's like your less conscious and conscious persona,
right,
to say. Yeah.
So I think that links really interestingly to a point you made about people don't realize the power of perception, because it's not just about, like, they're called, personality assessments. It's sort of a yucky way to think about it, right? Because like every personality is welcome in every company.
Exactly.
That's actually not. We were speaking with this about this with another House of Visionaries resident recently. It's not about personalities that are welcome and not welcome. Obviously, every company is made up of every different background and personality, people coming skill set, people coming at it from all different angles. But there's a common language, or there's a common set of mantras, or a common ethos of the company that the company needs to establish and make so clear and make so consistent in conversation that those are the non-negotiables. It doesn't mean that you have to be an extrovert. Exactly. It doesn't mean that you have to come in and be the loudest person in the room, or be full of sunshine every day, or stifle the things that are going on in your outside life and show up as your absolute shiniest self, because let's face it, there are days that you don't feel that way.
Exactly.
And people should be welcome to bring their whole self to work. But it sounds like an interesting way to not just do have this be a part of your hiring process because it's interesting and people can have a read and then can it and never look at it again. It sounds like it's something that you've really kind of embedded in your culture.
Exactly.
Do you guys do you encourage managers to come back to whatever their results are of those of people learning a little bit more about how they come across? Is this something that's used day to day, week to week, like in their meetings with their in their one-on-ones? How is it actually used day to day?
That's actually a great question. So we actually use it in a little bit of a different sense. So in the sense that you've said it, yes, but we actually use it as a tool, as a piece, as a way for, as sort of like a cheat code, I guess, right? So instead of it being, hey, truthfully, everybody shows up in every one of those colors. Everyone has every color. And so we're very intentional to say, this isn't to box you into a color. This isn't to say, oh, today we're meeting with all reds or all yellows. Like, that is not how we use it, and that's what a lot of people tend to use it as.
And pause quickly and explain what these are, because to shock no one, I am a yellow-green.
Okay. Right, to shock
so explain little bits to people who've never done one of these.
Okay.
It is, remind me of what the program is called, the test
is
called.
So it's called Insights Discovery.
Insights Discovery, that's right.
Yes, Discovery Insights. Insights Discovery, one of them. But basically, there are 4 colors: red, blue, yellow, and green. Each one of these are what we call energies. Okay, and everybody has all 4 energies. There's the less conscious and the more conscious persona. And what that means is, on the day where you show up to work, who you show up to be is your conscious persona. You are aware that, hey, I'm at work, I have to present, I have to be on. That's your conscious persona. And then who you are naturally, who you are at home, your just average everyday person is your less conscious. So the way that we use it at Dew Point, for example, high red energy is typically, get things done.
Assertive.
Very assertive, yep. High yellow energy is, I want to do everything with everyone, very high level, typically happy, collaborative, wants to involve everyone. High blue energy is data analytical, very methodically approaches things. Process, lists, agendas.
Yeah.
These are the people that are typically, they pay attention to detail, right? And then you have the high green, who are more of the, I want to do things together. Like, they're empathetic. They are the ones typically in tune with the emotions of the organization. And so what we notice is, in making everyone aware that, hey, we all own all of these different 4 energies, but on some days we can pull them up as needed. What if we use that to our advantage? If we're a collaborative company, and we are, it literally required, like, we literally have to collaborate to get things done. what if we used what we knew about each other in our everyday lives, to your point, right? So we would encourage people to go to meetings and say, you know, if you're pulling up a different energy than you normally would, say that. We encourage people to actually say, hey, can you send me your insights profile before we meet so I can refresh myself on the best ways to communicate with you. And we would actually tell our employees, take these with you to your conversations with your managers. And we've even said, we're thinking about how to actually make it something like just outward, whether it's buttons or some sort of something where people can switch to different colors to say, hey, I'm pulling this energy today, or hey, I really need to be focused in the details, so I'm really trying to have a meeting where it needs to be quick, so I'm pulling up my red energy. Anything that could help us walk into a collaboration, a meeting, a presentation, or even just a social interaction, anything that we can do to support the employees, we tell them, use those profiles.
And to give the person what they need on one end, but also for you to receive information like you need to receive it. So we used it at my last company, and it's a really cool way to, like, my manager was red blue, absolute through and through process. No room for like fluff or details. I, however, am the queen of fluff, of detail. I need, nothing becomes real until I socialize it and I kind of hash it out with somebody. And I want to like verbalize my ideas out loud. But I realized, I took it after reporting into him for a year, and we worked fantastically together, but it actually was such a eye opener to both of us, being like, oh, so we actually communicate the opposite for both of us about how the other processes information best. So I would come moving forward. I'd still be able to riff a little and like get what I needed from him, but I'd come with an agenda and be like, just so that you know in advance, here are the 5 things I'd like to cover. I'll still Christy my way through a lot of this conversation, and I can still be my authentic self, but you know what I need from it, and I know how you need to perceive information.
Exactly. And also to that point, I know we're wrapping, but also to that point, you could also use that, it also creates that space for you to be honest about how you show up. And I love that, especially with me and Lori. She's high yellow energy. I'm literally polar opposites. And on the days where I know there's a culture event, if I'm drained, I can say, Lori, I'm really exhausted. I've been pulling up my high energy all day, my high yellow energy all day. She'll say, tap me in, and she will do that because she knows that. And it just creates that space to be able to say, here's what I'm doing today and here's how I'm showing up today, which is so important as well.
So to wrap up, for the people who don't have Discovery Insights, but like this concept, right? Like, this is a thing that is a conversation that can be had with it, and maybe it's not based on the different energy, the colors of different energies, but what would you say are the learnings or like the things that can be applied to a company who isn't ready to go implement Discovery Insights within their company, but who wants to start having these types of conversations, and who feel that maybe having managers be more aware of this stuff, both about themselves, but also about their direct reports, how they communicate, how they show up, so that they can sort of meet in the middle and find common ground. What are some like key takeaways of, I might not have access to this platform in my company or to this tool, but I should do these things. I should think about these things in my interactions with my employees to be a good leader, not just technically. Check. I get all of my my functional expectations done, and I'm a performer from like a measurable perspective. But am I a good leader? Do my people feel invested in me? Do they feel comfortable talking to me? Do they understand how to be authentic with me? What are a couple of the key takeaways that you could get from Discovery Insights, but if we don't have it, that we could still use?
I would say for sure, just start the conversation with what's important to you. What do you need? How do you feel valued? How do you feel recognized? That's almost always going to be your golden ticket. You're going to understand who they are, how they work, what's important to them, and you'll understand better how to work with them. And then also, I would say the second key takeaway is be willing to step outside of what you think. Be willing to receive as well. Be willing to process. Be willing to be intentional. Take the time to be intentional, to tap into your team, especially when it comes to the work that you're doing. They have to feel tied and connected to it. So if you can connect, if you can help them and guide them doing that, then you're golden. And also that learning, you have to have a continuous learning mindset. If you're willing, even at the highest level, to be learning as the generation changes, as the company changes, as things evolves, you're going to constantly be able to go with the ebbs, the webs and flows, the ins and out, no matter what it is, because you're willing to learn, you're willing to pivot.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Manny, thank you. We've covered a lot of ground. We're running out of time, but listen, we've 5 years later never done anything like this where I've actually gotten to pick your brain about a lot of the kind of evolution and journey that Dew Point's been on. But they are very lucky, and I know Lori knows this, to have you at the helm. And you guys are, I've always said, such a power duo. So I've always loved the evolution. It's been really fun to actually hack into some of these bits of how you guys have kept the culture consistent all these years.
Yes.
But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome, and I truly enjoyed it. It's always great talking to you.
Always.
Yeah.